Hi guys, I'm back again today with another video, and today we're checking out why Germany has so many names. Well, I didn't know that. I just thought it was Germany, or like there's like a German word before. I don't even know if Germany is a German word. Guys, do not. Okay, we're dumb over here. So I thought there would be like one other name. Like Germany was like the globalized name, but there was like this like deep German, I don't know how to call it, that will be Germany's name. Okay, maybe Germany was just like globalized because like we can pronounce it, and then there's another word that Germans use that like the rest of the world cannot pronounce. So I thought there was only two, but then we're gonna learn. So before we do start, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and let's begin.
Allemagne, Deutschland, Niemcy, Sachsen.
Duh, Rookie, I do know Deutschland. There we go. I do know Deutschland existed, but I didn't know there's Alemani, Saxe, Niemcy.
Vokietia, Tyskland. What do you call Germany? Because there are so many options.
Deutschland.
Every country has an endonym, what they call themselves in their native language, and at least one exonym, which is what everybody else calls them, usually a
That is the word endonym and exonym.
language, and at least one exonym, which is what everybody else calls them, usually a slightly different version, at least adapted to the foreign languages. It's why the Portuguese city of Lisboa is called Lisbon in English, Lissabon in Swedish, or Lisbona in Italian. In other cases, instead of adaptations, an exonym can be completely different from an endonym. Take the example of this country, which in English we call Greece, but the entire Arab world calls a version of Yunanistan, while the Greek people themselves call the country Hellas. Just like Japan calls itself Nihon or Finland Suomi. But in most of these cases, there is a native version and then a foreign exonym version that everybody kind of uses in their own way. However,
Now I'm thinking, I was like, what do we call Philippines? We just call it Philippines. Filipinas. Okay, okay, okay. So everybody calls it the Philippines, and we just call it Pinas or Filipinas.
there is at least one country with multiple exonyms which are very different from each other, and that is Germany. This map of Europe shows us that very well, with each color representing an exonym that the country has. Some versions of Allemagne or Alemannia in yellow, Germany or Germania in green, Deutschland or Tyskland in blue, Niemcy or an adaptation in pink, and then specific ones for Latvia and Lithuania, and Estonia and Finland. It's also a good way of seeing how the same exonym can have different adaptations depending on the country where it is used and the language that is spoken there. Take for example Almanya in Turkey or Almain in Cornwall. In this video we are going to learn why Germany has so many super different exonyms and what each of them mean. So first, why are there so many names for Germany? The simple answer is because Germany as a territory has interacted with various parts of Europe throughout its history. It's in the middle of Europe, and so that makes sense. And inside the territory that we today identify as Germany, various tribes existed, some on one side and some on the other. And so very often the existence of different names, depending on where you are in Europe, for Germany, has to do with the fact that the tribe with which they interacted was one, when on the other side of Europe it was another. And so surrounding regions knew the territory through different names, depending on which tribe they interacted with and how that interaction went, from the Saxons to the Thuringians, among many others. It's very interesting to see how many European places today can still trace their etymology back to the time when these barbarian invasions took place. We talked about it a couple videos ago, how the region of Burgundy in France traces its origin to the Burgundians, which came from an island in Denmark. And another example is France, which takes its name from the Franks, which also invaded the Western Roman Empire. But anyway, back to Germany. To find out more answers about how each individual exonym came to be, we need to go look at their origin, understand where they come from, and what they mean. But first, let's begin by understanding the endonym itself. Deutschland, what Germans call themselves in German. The German word has its roots in the Old High German word diot, meaning people, and the connected adjective diustig, which means of the people. Therefore, Deutschland kind of just means people's land or land of the people. The people, in this case, being the Germans. A few other countries in Europe, mostly the ones that are closely connected to Germany, call them that too. So I don't know if we should call those an exonym. In the map, they're colored in blue too, and the two biggest examples are the Dutch version of it and the Scandinavian one. The Netherlands and Flanders use Duitsland and Scandinavia uses Tyskland. I guess they are different words, but Tyskland is based on the older Germanic and Nordic words Pidisker and Thjoda, which I'm definitely mispronouncing. But they simply mean people, so the meaning is exactly the same, and the origin too, it's just adapted to a different language somewhere else. Now, this video is all about learning the names that Germany has across Europe, how they're different, and where they come from. And while my channel is a great place to learn about history or etymology, another great place to learn is Brilliant. Brilliant data and act to actually and memorize topics through fun is much skill, math, quizzes, or try knowledge video. And now let's get back to it. So now that we understand the origin and the meaning of Deutschland, I think we can move on to the exonyms, and I think we should start with Germany because it's the one that we use in English, which is the language that I am speaking to you right now. The modern English word Germany derives from the Latin Germania, which we can see on the map is what the Italians still call the country today as well. The earliest use of this term has been found in the writings of Julius Caesar, a large group of tribes east of the Rhine River. It's interesting how the Romans seemingly just grouped all of these different tribes together, giving them a single name, instead of bothering to set them apart individually. In fact, it really seems like they just decided to group up all of the tribes west of the Rhine River and call them Gauls, and group up all of the tribes east of the Rhine River and call them Germani. And so in this case, the origin of Germania in Latin would just be the land of the Germani tribes. So we need to take a look at the origin of Germany itself, but that is a little more complicated. According to the book titled precisely Germania by Tacitus, a Roman senator and historian, he writes how Germania was a modern and recently introduced name and had been previously applied only when referring to the Tungri tribe, which actually lived in what is today Belgium. This would therefore be at least one of the tribes that Julius Caesar had talked about and referred to as the Germani Cisrenani, the Germans on this side of the Rhine. But it still leaves the question open of what the word meant and where it came from, or if Julius Caesar just made it up. Some say that in Old High German, it meant the way that German people refer to each other, and so the tribes had sort of a concept that united them, and they used that term, but this sounds a little uncertain to me. Others say that he would have gotten the name from the Gauls, which had a word for the tribes across the Rhine River, referring to them as Germani, which would mean something like sons of the forest or just neighbors. And so we can't really know where Germani comes from, but either way, it came to be adapted and used to refer to the tribes in the territory that we today know as Germany in general. So while it is uncertain in its meaning, we can trace the origin very precisely. It was what the Romans called the area of Germany in Latin. Today, it's used by the United Kingdom, Italy, Greece, Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro, Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova, in addition to almost all countries formerly part of the British Empire, as we can see on this map, with the addition of Russia, Georgia, Cyprus, Armenia, and Mongolia. But if the origin of the term is Latin, it is a little weird that the British kept using it despite their Anglo-Saxon language. When you look at the countries of Scandinavia or the Netherlands, they didn't do that. And the reason why is pretty interesting, and we need to move on to the next exonym to actually understand what the reason was. Because while they kept Germania, other Latin and Romance language speaking countries changed it, as is the case with France, Portugal, and Spain, the former colonies of these countries across the world, and the entire Arab world. because all of these here in yellow in the first map use a version of Allemagne, Alemania, Alemania, Almania, or Elmania. So where does this exonym come from? Another tribe. The name Allemagne came from the Alemanni tribe who lived in Alemania, which is today's Alsace, parts of Baden-Württemberg, and Switzerland. And I would guess that the people in what is today France just started using it to refer to the people of Germany because it was the first point of contact that they had with that territory, which puts a little in question the idea that Julius Caesar would have gotten the Germani name from the Gauls, because if the Gauls called them Alemanni, that wouldn't be possible. It then spread to Spain and Portugal as the Reconquista took place, and then to the Arab world as Portugal and Spain were the first points of contact of these people with Europe. And here we get to understand why the English actually use Germania, or Germany, instead of coming up with their own version or something that is a little more Anglo-Saxonic, if you will. Because in English, the name Almain or Alman was used for Germany until the 16th century. The word German was then first reintroduced in around the year 1520 as an alternative word at first, perhaps related to the Renaissance and the fascination with all things ancient, then becoming a replacement word and the official term they used to refer to that country. Interestingly, the regions of Cornwall and parts of Wales within the island of Great Britain kept versions of the origin Allemagne, Cornwall using Almain and Wales Id Almaen. And the reason seems pretty simple because Cornish and Welsh draw on their interactions with medieval Europe, especially with Old French, and I guess they got the name from there and then just decided to keep it when the English ended up changing it. So Deutschland, Tyskland, Germany, and Alemania are understood, but what about the rest? Because there are at least 3 more exonyms of Germany that we need to learn about. The Slavic one, like Niemcy in Poland and its variants, the Finnish and Estonian one, Saksa and Saksama, and the Lithuanian and Latvian ones, Vokietia and Vasija. Again, I know that I'm probably mispronouncing these, so just correct me in the comments if you know how to say it properly. Let's start with the Slavic one that's shown in pink on the map because it's used by so many countries in Eastern Europe, although nowhere else in the world, I guess connected to the fact that these countries didn't have colonial empires that they spread their language to. The origin of this one is the fact that Slavic languages initially described Germans as Niemcy, meaning something like those that couldn't talk. Or if you want a more direct translation, I guess it would be mutes. One translation I saw also wrote it as the silent ones, which makes it look much cooler
Our
and also
German's
much
quiet.
scarier. And the explanation behind this is the fact that communication between 2 different tribes at the time was a little difficult when they spoke such different languages. And so these Slavic people started referring to the Germans or the tribe of Germans that they interacted with as Niemcy, the silent ones, because communication wasn't possible. It's not that they were actually.
A while ago, without him explaining it, I was like, I don't think Niemcy is a nice. Like I didn't. It wasn't my favorite, right? But now that he's explaining, I was like, oh, that's so badass. That's so cool.
Mute, it's just that nobody understood each other. The term then spread to all of the Slavic regions, Russia being a big exception, and Hungary one as well because it's not a Slavic country but it uses it, so the other way around. Actually, Hungary's case is interesting because while Hungarian is not a Slavic language, they borrow their word for mute from Slavic languages, nema. And so their exonym for Germany ends up being very similar to the Slavic one through an indirect root, being something like Nemetorzag, a compound word consisting of Nemet and Orzag, the latter meaning country. So something like country of the ones that can speak, I guess. A fun fact, a similar case to the Slavics referring to the Germans as mute is the origin of the word barbarian, which would supposedly be onomatopoeic. In the Greek ear, speakers of a foreign tongue made unintelligible sounds, something like bar, 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 and then the term barbarian would have come from that. I don't know if this is actually true, but it would be a pretty cool explanation. So now that we understood the Slavic exonym for Germany, there's only 2 left. So let's start wrapping things up by understanding the Finnish and Estonian one, Saksa, which comes from Saxon or Saxon in English, which were the tribes that they interacted with the most or which were most prevalent at the time that the term came to be used by the local Finnish and Estonian people. So it's exactly the same logic as the French calling it Allemagne. It was just the tribe that was closest or best known to them from the territory of Germany. Estonia uses a version of it called Saksama. I guess it's exactly the same, just in Estonian. Which brings us to the last exonym used for Germany, the ones used by Lithuania and Latvia, which despite being different are grouped up in the map, so it leads us to believe that they have a common origin, Vokietia and Vasia, respectively. And I left this one for last because the origins and meaning of them are a little uncertain, if not fully unknown. They both contain the root words vaka or vakia. Lithuanian linguist Kazimieras Buga associated this with a reference to a Swedish tribe named the Vagoths in a 6th century chronicle. I mean, the Romans called the whole of Germany Germania after a set of tribes that were actually in Belgium, so it would be pretty likely that they called Germany this other name because of a Swedish tribe. It's not unheard of. At the same time, Latvian linguist Konstantins Karulis proposes that the word may be based on the Indo-European word wek, meaning speak, from which derived the Old Prussian word wakis and the Latvian word veskis, both meaning something like war cry. And so if the German tribe that they interacted with was known for having a specific war cry, that could be the origin of the term. Or maybe they also made incomprehensible sounds with their language that the Baltic people didn't understand, and so they associated with just a noise and chose this name to refer to them in a similar way that the Slavics chose Niemcy. Some other people claim that the name comes from later and is connected to the similarity between Vokietis, a German, and the word Vokti, which means to steal, because of the German Teutonic and Slavonic orders being seen as pillagers of the locals, but this seems a little made up to me. I think the theories by the actual linguists and people that work on this are a little more likely, but which one is true, or the fact that maybe both are, is very uncertain. And so we learn about the 6 or 7 exonyms that Germany has in Europe and the world. And understanding, first of all, why they exist, due to the fact that Germany is such a central territory in Europe, and the fact that throughout its history, it interacted with neighboring regions through different tribes and in different ways. And so also finding out what those exonyms mean and where they come from, most of them being associated to a specific tribe of Germany, like the Alemanni or the Saxons, or a group of tribes that Julius Caesar seemingly just decided to call the Germani. Or even to the fact that they didn't understand what the tribe said or a specific noise that they made. All of them being pretty different from the endonym of Deutschland that the Germans used to refer to themselves, which surprisingly is used by some countries really far away, like China, Vietnam,
Oh,
Taiwan, or
Philippines,
Japan, which isn't
Alemania.
unheard of. For instance, China, Vietnam.
Like here, we use this derived from Alamani tribe Parsberg. Oh, Germania, Germany. We just say Germany to be honest, but I'm thinking in like the olden times, what we would call it, probably. If not Germania, I would think, but wait, I need to go back and see something. Sorry. Okay, a little bit further. Huh. I wonder why we would say Alemania. Why is it? Why is the Philippines in the orange though? Maybe makes sense, I guess.
Different from the endonym of Deutschland that the Germans used to refer to themselves, which surprisingly is used by some countries really far away, like China, Vietnam, Taiwan, or Japan, which isn't unheard of. For instance, Norway refers to Greece as Hellas, so that they are correct and use the endonym. Which exonym of Germany do you use for your country? Let me know in the comments, along with any other interesting cases that you know of these types of super different exonyms for a specific country when compared to the endonym or to other exonyms that it may have. Remember to subscribe to the channel. As a reminder, if I get to 1 million subscribers, I'm gonna do a full episode in a Napoleon costume. So if you want to see that, you have to subscribe.
That'll be a good
Thank you so much to
Halloween
my
one.
patrons for supporting me on there.
But yeah, I would have thought that in the Philippines we'll use Germania or something back in the days. But I think I get it historically, but we would have gotten it from those countries who came to colonize the Philippines. So Alemania is the appropriate term, like olden times. But then like recent history, it will be Germania for some reason. I don't know why, because that's what I've heard more. And obviously now in the modern time, the present, we could say Germany. That's it, right? But let me know yours. Where, what do you use to call Germany? And my favorite, I would say, is Nimense because it's cool. I think that's how you say it. But I do like Deutschland as well. It's just so like powerful, and it's like a very royal, it's like royalty with power, right? It's just so Deutschland. It's just so beautiful. Um I like that as well. So anyways, beautiful peeps, let me know what your country's exonyms are, if there are, and if you want me to react to your country's exonyms explained. Let me know down in the comments. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.